It's Electric Drives. Your electric vehicle future starts right now. Welcome to the show. I'm Anthony Algmin, and I'm joined by my co-host, Bob Reese. We created this show to make it easier for others looking to move to electric vehicles, and that's more and more people every day. We're out there using electric vehicles in our normal lives, and we'll share the wisdom we've gained from living with EVs every day. You can join in the conversation by sending your questions and topic ideas to questions@electricdrives.us, by joining our Facebook group, or by becoming a patron at patreon.com/electric drives to get more direct access and help support the show. We're here to share and learn together and reduce the confusion when transitioning from gasoline to electric vehicles. So let's get started. Bob, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Awesome.
Looking forward to the subject.
So today we're going to switch it up a little bit. We're going to talk about why you might not want to make the leap to electric vehicles just yet. So first and foremost, Bob, are we too big of fanboys here for electric vehicles? Are we going to be able to be like actually talking about things that honestly people may not want to buy an electric vehicle yet? Or are we too far gone? Can we do any of this credibly at this point?
I'm afraid I might be a little biased, but
Yes,
I'll try.
So, we're going to try, because I think, and we've talked about this in our sidebar conversations, electric vehicles are not yet for everybody. In the last episode, we talked about phone apps that electric vehicle owners might want to be using or might want to consider using. And I kind of walked away from that conversation saying, that's complicated. There's a lot going on there. And I mean, I have relatives that barely know how to turn on their smartphone. They are maybe not ready for this kind of app-centric electric vehicle existence. And I think that's a fair place to start. It's like, if you're a little bit conservative in terms of your use of technology, and you don't want to rely on all the software stuff and whatever, you just want a car that gets you from place to place and you don't put too many miles on, is it worth paying the premium? Because electric vehicles, as we've talked about previously, they cost more. And if you don't put enough miles on it, you're not going to get much benefit from the savings on the battery versus gasoline. I think that's one area that we could probably agree on. Like, if you don't drive the car enough and you're a little bit resistant to some of the software stuff, maybe not for you just yet.
That's true. There's a break-even point. You can buy used gasoline cars for relatively dirt cheap, like 10 grand or thereabouts. And it's hard to find electric cars in that same ballpark. And when you consider that the cheapest electric cars are around, just under 30,000 in cost, that's kind of a stretch for many people.
Yeah. And there's a certain amount of privilege. Like, even buying new cars is not something that everybody can do. And so we can't take for granted the fact that, like, there is no used market for viable electric cars. Like, you can go buy a used Toyota Camry with 100,000 miles on it that's 10 years old, and you can get a lot of life out of that car still. There aren't electric vehicles that are 10 years old. For the most part, there's not too many of them that you're going to be able to go buy for cents on the dollar from new and be able to get a lot of life out of them. They haven't been around and useful for that long yet.
Right. Yeah. For the most part, in our family operates on a trickle-down type of basis. My wife always gets probably the newest car. I get a new car, maybe not as fancy as hers, and then I run it to 150 or 200,000 miles and then pass it down to the daughters. And then they run it into the ground. So eventually they'll be able to get some electric vehicles. But for the most part, the initial cost is really hard to absorb. Now, for me also, I get to write it off because I'm doing it all for, 90% for business mileage. And I do have mileage IQ to keep track of my mileage and make sure that the IRS is happy, because it monitors exactly where I'm at and how many miles are for business and that type of thing.
And that's got to be a pretty substantial amount for you. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because when you're driving 45,000 a year, then
Yeah,
it adds up.
definitely. And so that's one area. I mean, just the cost, the core cost factors definitely make it so that it is not the first thing that some folks should have. The other thing that I think about is like, if you live in Montana or one of the Dakotas, you may very well not have enough charging infrastructure around you to really support everything that you'd want to do. And it's not that you couldn't get by, especially if you had charging at your house and you weren't taking this on long trips. It's just that it's going to be a bigger hassle. And even in areas that are relatively well covered, even say like we're both in the Chicagoland area, which is obviously very easy to find electric vehicle charging, but we go 100 miles, south southwest, all of a sudden we're in a much more rural area. We're far less charging options all in front of us every day. And even there, the fit of it all, especially if you're renting an apartment or you're not able to charge overnight or whatever, like it may not be worth it right now. Now, granted, if you're driving to Chicago from 100 miles away every day, that you may find yourself saying, you know what, I'm willing to deal with a little hassle to save 10, $15 every day on that kind of drive. So the more you're driving, sometimes makes it so that the electric vehicle is way more interesting versus if you're driving a lot, even if you're in a less populated area, like there's trade-offs there, right? And so like it may be more of a hassle, but you may get a whole lot of gain from that as well. So you just really have to think about like, what is your use case? And this is one of the reasons like that we set out to do this podcast, is that we want to have the conversations with folks to say, hey, what is your use case? Like, what is it about what you're thinking about now that we're trying to navigate? Like, are you, do you live in an urban environment? Do you live in a rural environment? How much are you driving? Where can you charge? What are the kinds of places around you that you want to go to? Is there charging options that are free or whatever? Like there's so many different variables in this whole situation that we can't just give the answers to everybody to say, yes, these people should definitely get electric vehicles and these people definitely shouldn't. And that's that. Like, no, like it's a constantly evolving situation. And so this is just us trying to help you think through the problems in a way that might be make it a little bit more actionable, a little bit easier for you to understand, okay, here's what I might want to do in my own life with my own vehicle choices. As I think more and more, maybe it's one car away till you do an electric vehicle. Maybe it's two cars, but it's nothing that can hold you back from learning about it now and understanding and making the right choices both today, tomorrow, and in the years in the future. There's a couple other things that I want to talk about, just kind of tied into some of this range and kind of use of the car situation, that you might not want an electric vehicle. Now, depending on your range needs, like if you need to drive further to work on a regular basis than what your charge will allow you to do, that may not be a good fit, because you don't necessarily want to have to charge in the middle of a commute or something like that. The other big one, and now we're starting to see some trucks come out, like the Ford F-150 or the Rivians, and Chevy has a Silverado coming out in not too long, and there's the theoretical Cybertruck that may eventually get here. But despite that, towing capacity, even in electric vehicles, is not going to be comparable to, like, especially like a diesel engine, super torquey thing that can pull a house behind it. Like the electric vehicles are just not going to be that, as far as I can tell, anytime soon. Do you know any more about that? Like what the towing ratings are, or what is on the horizon there?
I've seen some videos of some Rivians and some Ford F-150s doing towing. We know for the most part that they are going to be really losing the range. Some of those have gigantic batteries, like 4 times the size of the batteries that we have in our cars, and they can do it. But how many locations are there in between here and there? If you're going out to Yellowstone, you need quite a bit of range, and you may not be able to get it with those types of vehicles towing a trailer.
Yeah, if you want to take a small boat to the lake that's 40 minutes
Yeah.
away, you're going to have no problems. You're going to be good.
Right. Right.
If you want to go cross country carrying the kind of bus sized RV trailer behind you, you might have some challenges. The other thing about that, this is something that you don't hear as much about, but like, okay, let's assume your truck can do the range towing and all of that. What is problematic is a lot of the charging stations that are out there for DC fast charging or what have you are not designed to accommodate large trucks with trailers behind them. They are not going to be easy. Even if you get to a charging location, you may not have an ability, if you're towing something, you may not be able to reach that charger very easily, and that is definitely a concern out there, and they're starting to engineer for that, but that is something that
Right.
they do
Right.
not have in place nearly as much.
No, they don't have it right now, but I thought I had read that Flying J was doing a partnership where they were going to be developing a lot of the truck types of, at their truck stops, having chargers available for big trucks, not only big trucks, but also pickup trucks and trucks towing trailers so they can run right through rather than having to pull into a slot and blocking half the shopping center or something like that. So those
Yeah.
types of things are in the works, but they're not quite ready right now. I know the the world's largest truck stop in just outside Wolcott, Iowa,
Love that place.
has a couple. They have a couple charging stations now, but they're just designed for cars because you've got to pull in facing it and charge and then pull out. So it's kind of hard for a truck to do that, especially if you got a big truck or something like that. So it'll be interesting to see as Flying J or some of the other entities start getting bigger, how they address the issues. Because they'll have to, because Rivian's getting big, and especially in Colorado and on the West Coast. And the F-150s are getting to be big too. So people are going to want to take.
Yeah, you're going to see so much growth in that in the next 2 or 3 years. Like, I just think, like, if you're in the market for an electric truck, kind of be happy that you're not going to get one for another 2 to 3 years anyway, because of how backlogged they are in the order process. And you're like, so by the time you do get one, we're going to see some improvements in this area. So I do think that that's something that's coming. It's not here today. I wouldn't jump the line and try to get your Ford F-150 right now if you're going to do a lot of towing. But again, if you can charge at home and you're only going to be doing local stuff, then get whatever you want. Then get that Hummer out, and you can, the EV Hummer, you can just drive wherever you want.
But getting back to the subject, right now it's very easy with a internal combustion vehicle to find places to get gasoline, get power. They're all over the place. And there's huge signs directing you to those places to get gasoline and diesel. And you're not seeing that as much for electric. So there's that little factor right now. And for general cars and so on, it's not bad because everybody's going to be setting up the Biden electric vehicle. Some of the bills that have passed, they're looking to have chargers every 50 miles. So that's going to address the automotive type of entity as far as going places. But still, if you've got a gasoline vehicle, you can just about stop anywhere and keep on going. And it takes less time. It takes less time. You can do a fill up, in like 10 minutes for a gasoline vehicle, but try doing that with electric to go that same range.
Right. Well, and we're barely able to cover the mainstream conditions, and what we're talking about here are some of those border conditions. So some of those fringe cases of towing a big thing with your big truck, the infrastructure wasn't designed for that. They were just trying to deal with the electric vehicles that were there already, and so there's going to be some catch up. There's going to be some evolution. There's going to need to be some investment towards some of those border conditions, but it will get there. It's a matter of a handful of years, not a matter of a decade. Like, and so we'll see how that evolves, but that's one area to think about depending on your use case. Like, how do you want to do that? And there's a lot of factors that could make or break why that may or may not be worth it sooner than later. The other piece, so there's one other area. Well, there's a couple other areas, but there's one area that I think is overlooked in terms of what folks are thinking about with electric vehicles, and that is outside of Tesla, because Tesla was born and bred to do their electric vehicles, and they've established their unique service offerings for that, and their mobile service and all of that. They've been from the beginning kind of ground up there, and you're going to see the same thing from like the Rivians and Lucids or whatever. The problem is that the legacy automakers that are moving into the electric vehicle world do not know how to service these cars at all at their dealer networks. They have really struggled. Now, you're probably going to tell me GM is going to be the exception.
No. Even GM's, you only have a few certified mechanics in each facility. Mm-hmm. It's not like rolling in and you have 25 mechanics and everyone can take care of a truck. There's usually, you have to have all the certifications to even touch the cars because of the battery and the chance of, mishaps, right, so to speak. Right. If you handle things incorrectly, I mean, you got a bigger battery there. Mm-hmm. So you've got to have certified mechanics, and some dealerships, and I read horror stories looking through Facebook of whole sections of the country where there's not a certified person to take care of some of the GM products. And luckily in the Chicago market, there's a number of fine institutions that have guys that know those things inside out. They love them. They know everything about them. And, but you get out in the hinterlands and it might be few and far between. Although I have to admit, driving through upper central Wisconsin, there's a couple dealerships up there that have chargers available for people to charge at. They're low speed chargers, only 25 kilowatt, but they are realizing that's going to be the trend, and they're trying to keep people going and also take care of their own customer base by having availability.
Well, I'm glad to hear that there's some that are kind of leading the charge there. And I would say generally the legacy automakers are selling them faster than they are building up the service capability. So there's a gap there that's widening at this point, and hopefully they'll address that and they'll get them working. But you talked about those chargers that were in the dealership. There's a dealership near where I live in the Chicago suburbs, and it's like you literally have to ask the service tech to pass a cord through the door to like be able to charge at this place. And this is like one of the few dealerships in the area that has a level 2 charger for you to use. And it's just like you got to talk to Billy in the garage area, and he'll hook you up with a cord. Like this is all documented in PlugShare and stuff. And it's like there's such a wide range of service levels, of reliability levels, of just awareness. Again, part of why we're creating this podcast, to have this conversation be more out there and be able to engage with the folks that are interested in it, because this is how we build the knowledge that's going to be necessary to take us to that world where electric vehicles are really the norm, not the exception. Because outside of California right now, like it is the exception, the relatively rare exception. You're seeing more and more of them, but we're definitely needing to build a lot of awareness to be able to get this world to where the electric vehicles are expected to be and should be. And for those of us that are driving them, we want to see that happen, but it definitely, you have to be realistic too. Cause like as cool as electric vehicles are, nobody should be buying one of these if it's not going to serve their needs appropriately. And one of the things that we talked about with the apps and that stuff is, sometimes, you don't want to be a beta tester for software. And that is what we've seen across the board. I think every maker of an electric vehicle has had bugs in their code or had weird gremlins in their infotainment or even some of the powertrain stuff or whatever. Like, some of the automakers are really struggling to get over the air updates working and things that have become expectations. That is a learning curve too. And again, if you're not comfortable with that, if you're like, I just want my car to get me to work, like if you're not an enthusiast, like It's okay. You don't have to apologize. Use gas for a few more years if you need to. It's okay. And that's the thing. Like, on one hand, I like all of this stuff, so I'm excited about it. But on the other hand, I'm like, sometimes you just want the car to get you there, and like you just want to rely on it. You know, it's going to start on a cold day. You just know you're going to be able to get it to and from the office, and sometimes, the electric vehicle situation with software, these, especially some of the legacy automakers, they're just not software companies by design, and they're struggling with some of this stuff. And especially like the ones that have outsourced a lot of it and approached it like they approach building cars traditionally.
Right.
That doesn't work
right.
so well with the software side of it that we've learned and seen. So a lot of rough edges, a lot of different things happening even now. Even though we've matured a lot in the last 5 years, it's still not necessarily anything comparable to the level of maturity that you have in the traditional internal combustion world. And that there's something to be said for that. Like, if you need the cheapest way to get to and from work, unless you're driving a really long way, buy a cheap used car that's reliable and hold on to it for the next 10 years. That's still probably the way to go, at least as long as gas doesn't get to like $6 and $7 again.
It will be. They'll have to raise the price, and they've already talked about eliminating gasoline over the long haul and restricting the manufacturing of internal combustion engines and so on. When you get down to it, an internal combustion engine is only about 35% or 40% efficient, and that's on the high end. So you've got a lot of waste heat, which is great in the winter for long drives, but it's also waste money going out the door.
That's right. And I mean, that's the thing, is like the electric vehicles get the benefit of having centralized power sources that you then consume through the electrical outlets and then store them in your batteries. And it's definitely where things are heading, but we also want to be pragmatists about where that transition lies for different folks in their different situations. So we encourage any of you listening, please do send us questions. Please do send us, your situation. Maybe we'll even have you on the show, because we want to talk through these things. There's only so many topics Bob and I will be able to cover just generally. We really want to get into that conversation with the audience, because this is how we can help you in a direct manner, and then help others that have similar situations that are also going to be watching or listening to the show. So definitely want to encourage you to do that. Bob, anything else that we forgot in terms of why people may not want an EV? I think we've been relatively fair given our admittedly biased perspectives on this, right?
Some of it is also the front to rear ratio as far as weight distribution on a gasoline car versus an electric car. Electric car, because typically the battery pack extends from the front wheels to the back wheels all through, it has a good weight distribution across the body of the car, while your front wheel drive cars have the engine in front of the front wheels. So they might be running 60% of the weight is on the front wheels, which is great for traction and so on. Well, on the electrics, it's sort of spread out almost 50-50. So there are some benefits that way. But on the same token, there's a lot more being done with all-wheel drive and so on, where that doesn't become a factor anymore.
Right. That's true. And that's something
too. Also, something I forgot about. Electric cars are typically heavier too.
Oh, yeah.
And there's been a lot of complaints about tire wear, which when you get down to it, most of the tire wear issues are because there's so much torque on electric vehicles that people tend to spin the tires and drive more aggressively. And so some drivers are only getting 25 or 20,000 miles out of a set of tires. I currently have 75,000, and I'm only going to be changing them out because being in Chicagoland and driving in the upper Midwest, I'll need better tires for winter.
Yeah, I will help offset your longevity with my lack of longevity in my tires. But I am going to buy separate winter tires for my car because I will be driving it throughout the winter as well. And I'm just a big fan of winter tires, especially on the sportier cars. It really makes a huge difference. But I think, in the end, we're not going to be great advocates for sticking with internal combustion. I think we're both going to admit that. But at the same rate, I think we're trying to be realists too, and we're trying to help folks realize, hey, learn about this stuff, but make the right decision for you and your family and your particular situations. And we're here to help you try to do that, and that's really the most important thing. We're not here just to try to sell electric vehicles or anything like that. We're here to help navigate a changing time. And that's really what this is all about. So with that, I think we better wrap it up for today. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that YouTube bell icon. Please join our Facebook group and send your questions and topic suggestions to questions@electricdrives.us. If you'd like to get more direct access and help support the show, please join us on patreon.com/electric drives. Thank you for spending some time with us, and we wish you a smooth road ahead on your own electric drives. Thanks, everybody.